What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Mikanko deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one for you guys because this deck is an extremely powerful deck that's super fun to be able to play because your opponent is always going to take the damage, which is so fun about this deck. I've included some really spicy tech cards in this build for you guys, so without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell near so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like in your name description every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Ohime. Ohime is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card is an amazing boss monster, but is also a great searcher for the deck, with the ability that it cannot be destroyed by battle, and also your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving this card, which is a crazy powerful effect, and is a really awesome ability that you can basically just hand your opponent a kaiju, and then swing into that kaiju using this card or one of your other Mikanko monsters, and then your opponent takes the damage instead of you. This card also has a really cool ability that you can reveal this card in your hand to add a Mikanko card from your deck to your hand, accept another copy of this card, then discard a card. And quick effect, you can actually target an equip spell in your graveyard and equip it to one appropriate monster on the field, which is an insane effect. We then play 3 copies of Huli. Huli is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card actually helps us search out our trap cards, and is probably the best main deck Mikanko monster outside of the ritual monster, with a really cool ability that when you control an equip card, your opponent cannot target Mikanko cards that you control with card effects, and if either player equips an equip card to this card, you can actually add a Mikanko trap from your deck to your hand, but you can only use each effect this card once per turn, and all of our main deck Mikanko monsters besides the ritual monster actually share a really cool common effect. And if this card is not equipped with an equip card, you take no damage from battles involving this card, but if this card is equipped with an equip card, it cannot be destroyed by battle, and also your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving this card, which is an insane ability to be able to use with your Mikanko monsters, again, to hand your opponent a kaiju and then swing into that kaiju for game. We then play 2 copies of Hari. Hari is really good, but I feel like 2 is all you need for this card. This card is amazing in the deck because it has the ability, if an equip card becomes equipped to this card, you get to add a Mikanko equip spell from your deck to your hand. We then play a single copy of Nini. Nini is a really cool card in the deck, but again, only 1 is really what you need for this deck, and it's a really cool card in this build because this card is the ability during your opponent's turn, when this card is equipped with an equip card, quick effect, you can actually target a face-up monster your opponent controls and take control of it until the end phase, which is a really cool ability. This card is basically like a snatch steal to be able to take your opponent's monster during their turn, which is such a cool ability. We then play 3 copies of Ashoka Pillar. This card is so powerful as a 3-of in the deck because it's probably the best normal summon in the entire build. As if this card is summoned, you can add an equip spell from your deck to your hand. Then if this card's in attack position, change it to defense position, and you can only use effect this card once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, take 2,000 damage, which is very easy to bounce this card back off the field with your copy of Water Air Bisque that you're going to be searching off this card's ability, which is so cool. So you can use this card over and over again. It's very easy to be able to search out cards like Snatch Steal and Water Air Bisque off this card's ability, but we have a bunch of different cards you can actually search off this card's effect in this deck. We then play for our kaijus. We're going to be playing a single copy of the Thunder King kaiju, 1 copy of the Star Destroying kaiju, 1 copy of Dolgaram, a single copy of Gandarla. You really only need these in the deck because it's very easy to get to these cards because they're really big in the deck and they're really cool to be able to just summon to your opponent's side of the field and then basically use your Mikanko monsters to be able to attack into those monsters, and your opponent takes the damage instead of us, which is insane. I love that about this deck, that it's so easy to break your opponent's board, and it's such a cool strategy to basically hand your opponent a really big monster on their side of the field and then swing into that monster so your opponent takes damage. Plus we can get to these cards really easily with Interrupted Kaiju Slumber to be able to basically dark hole the field and then summon a kaiju to our opponent's field and a kaiju to our field, which is just amazing to be able to do. We then also play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is definitely a 3-of in the deck to be able to stop your opponent from touching the deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Armored XZ. Armored XZ is really cool in this deck because it works with our Armored XZ package we're playing in the X deck since we play so many level 3s in this deck. We then play 2 copies of the Great Mikanko Ceremony. This card is definitely a 2-of in the build because it lets us special summon a Mikanko monster from our hand, ignoring its summoning conditions, but return it back to the hand during our opponent's end phase, meaning we can summon out our copy of Ohime with this card's ability. And during your main phase, you can manage this card from your graveyard to send a Mikanko card from your deck to the grave, except another copy of this card, which is a pretty handy effect. We then play 2 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. Slumber is really cool because this card is basically a dark hole that destroys every monster on the field and then summons a Kaiju to your opponent's field and a Kaiju to your field, which is a really cool effect to just give us a really big monster, but also give us a safe target to swing into for game, giving our opponent a really large Kaiju on their side of the field. We then play 3 copies of Preparation of Rites. Prep is really good as a 3-of in the deck because this card is just amazing to be able to search out our copy of Ohime, essentially being the searcher for the searcher. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. Prosperity is definitely a 3-of in the build, just to basically use this card to help us dig into the deck for the exact cards we need. It's just an overall fantastic card in this build. We then play a single copy of Snatch Steal. Snatch Steal is just insane in this deck because we can literally search this card off of a Shoka Pillar, take control of an opponent's monster, which is absolutely crazy. And this card is so good in the deck. It's so amazing that you can actually search Snatch Steal in this deck, and it's a really good 1-of in the build. We then play a single copy of Double-Edged Sword. Double-Edged Sword is so good in this deck and is just a crazy powerful card because it has the ability that you can only control 1 of this card, and the equipped monster gains 2,000 attack points, and also both players take any battle damage from attacks involving the equipped monster. And if you take 2,000 or more damage, send this card to the graveyard, but it's never going to happen because we're going to equip this to an opponent's Kaiju that we give to them, and then once we do, that Kaiju is going to get huge, we swing in, and our opponent takes the damage we would have taken, so they take all the damage, so they basically take double damage from that Kaiju, which is absolutely crazy. Or we can just equip it to an opponent's monster, we can basically make that monster absolutely huge, and then swing into that monster with any one of our Mikanko monsters, and they're going to take double damage from what they usually would take, which is absolutely crazy. We then play a single copy of Axe of Fools. Quick shout out to my buddy Tyler who actually came up with this tech. It's crazy how powerful this card is and actually suggested this one to me a long time ago, but it's really a crazy card to be able to play in this build, and I love it because the equipped monster gains 1,000 attack and its effects are negated, and during each of the standby phases inflicts 500 points of damage to the controller of the equipped monster, so it does burn damage to the opponent, boosts the monster up by 1,000, and it's a negate equip spell, which is so cool about this card. We then play a single copy of Rondo. Rondo is just a good 1-of in the deck. I really like this card as a 1-of, because you equip it only to an opponent's monster, and then while you control a Mikanko monster, take control of the equipped monster, which again is kind of like a Snatch Steal, which is just so cool about this card. And neither player can activate cards or activate effects of the equipped monster while you control it. And then when this card leaves the field, send the equipped monster to the graveyard, and you can only control 1 of this card, and you can only activate it once per turn. We then play 2 copies of Fire Dance. Fire Dance is really cool as a 2-of in the build because this card lets us special summon a Mikanko monster from our hand or grave. If you equip this card to that monster, then you can special summon 1 monster from the opponent's graveyard to their field, but negate its effects, basically giving them a monster that we can swing into, which is a really cool ability. We then play 2 copies of the Mikanko Dance. Mikanko Dance is really cool as a 2-of. I feel like you only need 2 copies of this card, but it's really good. The equipped monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, and you can only use effect this card once per turn. Then at the end of the damage step, if your Mikanko monster battle, you can actually target 1 card on the field and return it back to the hand. And if this card is sent to the graveyard or is in your graveyard, you can actually target 1 Mikanko monster in your grave and special summon it. And if you equip it with this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. We then also play 3 copies of Water Arabesque. Water Arabesque is probably the most powerful card in the entire deck because this card has the ability the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, and during your main phase, you can actually special summon a Mikanko monster from your hand or deck with a different original name than the equipped monster, and if you do, equip it to this card, or equip to that card, then return the monster that this card was previously equipped to back to the hand. And with a Shoka Pillar, you can basically search this card from the deck, equip it to your Shoka Pillar, and then basically what you do is bounce bounce your Shoko Pillar back to your hand, and then equip this card to the Mikanko. You special summon out this card's ability, giving us access to any of our Mikanko monsters that we want, which is absolutely crazy, making this card a definite 3 in the build. And we can get to it so easy now with a Shoko Pillar, which is just really, really cool. So that's it for these spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to start with a single copy of Rivalry. Rivalry is really good as a 1-of in the build because if you control a Mikanko monster, you can actually target a face-up monster on the field and equip it with 1 equip spell from your deck that can be equipped to it, which is crazy powerful to be able to use in this deck. It's just such a really cool card in this build to be able to use with a bunch of different equip spells in this build that we have. And if an equip spell is sent to the graveyard while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can banish this card, and then you can target an equip spell in your grave and add it to your hand so you can grab that card back out of the graveyard and use it again. We then play a single copy of Spirit Walk. I really feel like Spirit Walk is a great 1-of in the build. It lets you target a face-up monster your opponent controls and equip that face-up monster to 1 Mikanko monster you control as an equip spell. Then, if a ritual monster card is on the field, your copy of Ohime, you can actually inflict 5 points of damage to your opponent for each equip spell that you control, and you can also banish this card from the graveyard and special summon 1 of your Mikanko monsters that's banished or in your hand, which is a really cool ability. I love that this card does that burn damage because it helps you in time, which is so cool about this deck. We then also play a single copy of Full Armored XZ. Full Armored XZ is just really cool in this build because, again, we play so many level 3s in the deck, it's very easy to go in for the Armored XZ package. And this card is so good to be able to search because if an XZ monster is on the field, a meatless effect resolves, you get to XZ summon 1 XZ monster using monsters that you control. And you manage this card from the grave and then target 1 XZ monster that you control and equip 1 other XZ monster from face up from field or from the graveyard to that monster's equip spell with the following effect: that the equipped monster gains attack equal to this card's attack, and if the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, destroy this card instead, which is great to give you some protection as well. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, guys, we're going to start with a single copy of Full Armored Dark Knight Lancer. This card is an amazing boss monster that's very easy to make with our Armored XZ package, and is actually the card we're going to summon off the Armored XZ trap card. This card has the ability that once per turn, you can also XZ summon this card using a rank 5 or 6 XZ monster that you control as a material, and you transfer all of its materials to this card. And also, once per turn, you can actually target an XZ card in the graveyard and add it back to your hand. And once per turn, if an equipped card becomes equipped to a monster that you control, except during the damage step, you can actually attach a monster your opponent controls to this card as a material, which is a great ability to use with this card because it's just going to get absolutely massive and eat cards off the field. We then play a single copy of Fortress. Fortress is really good to be able to search out our Armored XZ spells and traps from our deck to our hand. The only downside of this card is it cannot be used as a material while it has materials under it for an XZ summon, but you can actually summon this card using a rank 3 or 4 XZ monster you control as a material to make this card. You can play a single copy of Torpedo. Torpedo is really good in the deck as a 1-of because you can actually detach up to 2 materials from this card, and then when you do, you get to draw a card. Just a really cool ability. Just detach to and draw a card, then make your copy of Fortress, and then use Fortress's ability to search out your XZ trap, which is really an amazing effect. We then play a single copy of Fortune Tune. Fortune Tune's a really good 1-of in the build to be able to make this card so you can make your copy of Zeus, because this card is a really good card to be able to help you make your copy of Zeus. I love that this card has the ability, when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you actually get to target 2 level 3 monsters in your graveyard and shuffle both into the deck. If you return this card from your graveyard back to your extra deck, and also during each of your stamina phases, you gain 500 light points, and this card cannot be targeted by card effects, which is a really cool ability. I love that this card also has the ability, if this face a card would be destroyed, you can actually detach material from this card instead. So you just use that ability when you go into battle to be able to protect this card, which is just really amazing. And then during your main phase 2, you put a copy of Down Magician on top of it so you can have an extra material for your copy of Zeus, which is just really nice. Speaking of Zeus, we also play a single copy of Zeus, which is really good to be able to make as a board wipe, just in case we need to. 1 copy of Typhon. Typhon's amazing in this deck overall as a 1-of because none of our cards have more than 3,000, which is really really cool. The majority of our monsters we're summoning have 0 attack points, which is just insane. So this card is definitely a one-up in the build because you can make it so easy, especially since you usually want to go second with this deck. So this card is just really good to be able to make as a great skill drain for 3,000 attack point monsters, and it's just really good overall in the deck because it's also a bounce. We then play a single copy of Access Code to be able to pop cards on the field, and also comes out absolutely massive. 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff. 1 copy of the Fire Charmer, because we do play fires in the deck, and it's very easy to link climb. 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix to pop spells and traps. 1 copy of Nightmare Cerberus to pop monsters. We play a single copy of SP Little Knight, which you could play Underworld Goddess if you want to instead. But this card is really good as a double interruption. It's just an insane card overall, but it's really good in the deck overall. If you don't have this card, you can change it out for something else, like a copy of Underworld Goddess. You can change it out for like a copy of Selene if you want to. There's just other options that you can use instead of this card, but it's still really good overall in the deck. We can play a single copy of IP. IP is just really good in the deck overall to make SP Little Knight or Nightmare Unicorn during the opponent's turn. And then finally, we play a single copy of Salamangreat Alamirage. Alamirage is amazing in the deck overall because you can make this card really easily in the deck if you want to protect something, which is why we play this card as a one-up in the build. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Mikanko before, you should definitely give this deck a try. It's really fun to be able to just put your monsters on your side of the field, swing into opponent's monsters, and go, hey, you take the damage for that, I don't, which is just really insane. I love that about this deck, and it's just a really fun deck overall. So, that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.